Hello, and welcome to our latest episode on singleness. We are going to hear from the beautiful Emma Williams all about being single as a 26-year-old in Christian culture today.
Welcome to the Woman Being podcast community,
where we explore thoughts and opinions
and have the freedom to change our minds
without expectation or judgment.
We will hold a safe space and support each other
as we navigate together in the form of feminine. For any of you that don't know yet, my name is Kelly Werner. I am one of the woman beings on this podcast, and I'm joined today by Kellyanne.
Hello.
And Emma.
Hello. Here we are.
And we're here to talk about singleness. So, Emma, my first question is, for two people here who are not single and haven't been single for a long time, how's the weather up there? What is the current climate right now in Christian culture, just in life, in your mid-20s? How's it going?
Yeah, just as you guys have been super not single, I've been super single for the past several years. Yeah, I mean, how is the weather up here? I feel like I've been single for a while now, and honestly, I haven't really been actively trying to not be single for a long time. I feel like I haven't found myself really like having feelings for people or feeling a lot of like need within myself to date or to like actively be trying to find somebody. And I'm seeing a very limited pool of people to date in general, which is the classic Christian girl problem. But I think that it's interesting because I think that there's this idea that I had when I was a teenager that you kind of always had to have your eye on someone. You always need to like someone. I even remember at like a sleepover that some of my friends had, we were trying to decide on a boy for me to like because they all had boys that they liked. And so I needed to pick somebody essentially from my school. Like we actively were like, okay, we need to find someone for you to pick so that we can like all talk about these boys together. And like it wasn't even boys we were friends with. Like it was just boys that we saw and we're like, yeah. And so it was this really bizarre thing where it felt like this this need to like somebody or this need to be constantly looking for somebody. And then there's also that idea within the Christian church that relationship is oftentimes a big life goal for people, right?
Yeah.
Like that just hasn't been very high on my priorities list for a while. But I feel like I receive pressure about that from whether it's like small comments from family members who aren't even necessarily Christians to what's literally being preached from a pulpit on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like all of that to say that overall, I've really enjoyed being single in the time that I've been single. Like I think about the things that I've done with my life that I wouldn't have necessarily been able to do as easily if I wasn't single. You know, like I got to travel the world as a missionary and I studied abroad in college, which I actually wasn't going to do when I was dating somebody because I didn't want to leave them for several months. And I was able to move across the country on the drop of a hat, literally within a week, and things like that that wouldn't necessarily be impossible if I were married or if I was in a committed relationship. But I have been able to do these things without the consideration of another person, essentially. Like I don't have that I have more flexibility, essentially. And that's one of the things I've really loved about being single, and also just being able to invest in really great friendships and relationships. That's sort of like my broad single overview.
Really good friendships. some really great people.
Yeah, unfortunately, none of them are here today. But...
Oh, goodness. So, like, you kind of mentioned then, you feel pressure from, side comments, from the pulpit. I mean, and it's true. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you should get married, which is like, don't shit on anyone. Mm-hmm. But, like, is it hard to be single while most other women, due to probably a lot of that outside pressure, are like, kind of, it feels like a lot of people are like lonely and wanting a relationship, or like pining for a relationship, or like waiting around for a relationship? And like, what do you see that's done in single culture that's done well or not well? Because there's kind of a whole thing.
Yeah. As I was sort of thinking about this, about singleness and all that comes with it, I was having a hard time trying to think of women who are examples of singleness being done well in my life. And I think that part of that is actually because I don't necessarily think of those women as single women. Like, I think about the amazing, like, powerful, accomplished women that I do know, who I have grown up with, or who I went to college with, and or who I know now that are doing amazing things, and they happen to be single. I think that they are just living their lives, and I think that's a great example of singleness, is that actually your life doesn't stop with it. Your life isn't hindered. They're just accomplishing other goals. Like, they are successful in their fields. They're building great friendships. They're following their dreams and their passions. And so as I was trying to think about like women who are single that have been great examples of that, they're great examples of women who happen to be single. Mm-hmm. And I also think in sort of the non-Christian realm, like, I grew up with an example of a single woman, and that was my mother. Right? Like, she was single for much of my adolescence, save a few years that she was married to my brother's dad, and she managed to climb up in her career within state government. She has built a great community of people around her in South Carolina. Like, she has managed to raise two amazing kids, my brother and myself. And I mean, even at the same time, like, my father has been a single father for my entire life, basically. And so I think that I have also seen these examples of like really great parents who were single parents, my parents, being sort of showing me that that's not necessarily a necessity for a full life, but on the bad side, I can really dish.
Ooh, here's the dish.
Here we go.
Here's the tea. Are you guys ready for this? So you are so affected by the people that you surround yourself with, right? Like, when you are around people who are hyper-focused on one thing, that starts to creep into your focus, even if it wasn't in your focus before. So there's this narrative that we see in a lot of Christian culture that says you need to be married, you need to find a relationship. There's a lot of sort of pity that's dished out to single people, especially single women. And I feel like the more that I'm around single women who are falling into that mindset so much, it puts me into that headspace even when I wasn't in it before. I think another way that helps me to understand how that works is like, growing up, I never thought that I was fat, right? Like, I was always so skinny, like, it would be ridiculous to have called me fat. But I went to college and I was living in a dorm with all these girls who had toxic mindsets that were saying how they were fat. And they were girls who looked like me. And so I started to think, well, maybe I'm fat too. And I see the same thing happen with this mindset around singleness, or this sort of restlessness that so many women feel, where when I'm around that, I start to dwell on that more and more. And it's really unfair to me and to ourselves to have thoughts like that, because you aren't valuing all of the amazing things that are happening right now, and all the amazing things you have in your life, like your friendships or your pets or your job or your family. Like, all of those things are so great and you get to enjoy them, but you don't enjoy them to the fullest if you're dwelling on this one thing that you don't have, you know? And that can happen to people in like so many different realms. That can happen with like restlessness and where you are at with your job, or in wanting to look a certain way or whatever. Like, I think that that's pervasive across topics, but that's one thing that I've seen a lot. That's a toxic mindset that I see a lot of Christian women dwelling on a lot. Also, another thing that I see a lot of Christian women do is fall into this idea that they need to sort of put everything on hold before they meet their man. I have seen women pass up amazing opportunities to do things that are fun, to do things that are sort of once in a lifetime type things, because they've said, oh, well, I want to wait until I'm married so I can do this with my husband. And that's just like heartbreaking to me, because you don't know if you're going to have those opportunities again. You don't know if your husband's going to want to do those things that you've put on hold. And you also like don't know if you're going to have the means to do those things necessarily. Like, what if this is the only time in your life where you're able to take that crazy trip, or to jump out of that plane, or whatever? Like, what if this is the only time to do this? And why would you spend like your 20s or whatever essentially just waiting around? You know, like I don't want to look back on my 20s, and if one day I'm eventually married, see that as like a time that was wasted or void, you know? And I think that if the tables were turned, those same women would feel like it was ridiculous to ask their future husband, to put those things on hold.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it almost feels like this is, I would almost say that extends beyond singleness, because I feel like I see a lot of married women waiting around for their husband to like initiate, let's do this, or let's go here, or let's have this, you know, trip, or this, I've had this revelation from the Lord, or whatever it is. And I felt that a lot when I was early married, is that I had to like, that somehow we had to do everything together. And so spent a lot of time waiting. Yeah. And eventually figuring out like, oh, like, if this is on my heart, like I can do it. And totally. And like my husband does not have to be there for everything. Totally. There are the things that are important, like, you know, our wedding day and the birth of our children, and, you know, being there for each other in life. But like, if my husband doesn't want to quit his job and raise support and join a missions organization, like that's not on him, and it doesn't impede me from like going after what I feel like I'm called to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure.
And so if you like have this mindset going into marriage, you're going to have that mindset in marriage, and you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, it puts a lot of pressure onto this theoretical future human.
Yes.
That like you are sort of like gathering up all of these things that you want to do with this person, and then when you finally find them or whatever, like they are then given that entire burden that you've just been building up for them to take on eventually. And that's really not healthy. And it actually makes me think too of I think that this unhealthy mindset around singleness is pervasive even outside of just Christianity. Like I have seen so many women who put their value in the ways that their body can attract a man, or in the ways that they are receiving affirmation from men. And when they're putting their value into that, then if that man goes away, then their world comes crashing down because their foundation is built on him. And I think that that's pervasive in our culture as on a large scale, just because women have been told for millennia that their value is set into their significant other. It's set into that man.
I think that there's this expectation when you get married that like, oh, now I can have couples nights.
Yeah.
And then my husband's going to be best friend with their
This
husband
guy.
and I'm going to be best friends with her. And it's going to be
perfect.
great. Which that doesn't happen.
No,
I'm just
you
going to tell
can't.
people right
You
now.
can't shop for your husband's friends.
No,
it's
you
not
can't.
how it works.
And sometimes, you know, it works out. But like that's not a thing. So, kind of this idea that like you can't be friends with people who are married, or that like you're excluded from their life or whatever, and your life experience is not relevant until you have that spouse.
Yeah. I mean, even on a smaller scale, another thing that I think about is like sort of in being settled into the place that you live. Like I have seen women who don't want to, you know, fully really even decorate their space because they're like, well, I don't want to like have too many decorations or pieces of furniture because who knows what my husband will one day have, and like we'll have to merge our things together.
Yeah.
And like to me, that's you're not allowing yourself to even enjoy your home because you're waiting for this theoretical imaginary future human who may never come. Like I'm not saying that you must be single for the rest of your life, but like you don't know what tomorrow holds. And so to live like that is like you're sacrificing for a theoretical.
Or even like holding out on like piercings or tattoos. I've heard examples of people holding out on those things because they're like, I'm not sure what he's gonna like, or I don't know. And it's kind of like,
if he likes you, it shouldn't matter.
it does, yeah. Like first of all, for someone to like you, have to like you.
Yes.
So the things that you like should eventually attract the person that you want to be with. You know, it's not like you're not like singleness is not keeping a blank slate until somebody can come and paint on it.
Yeah. Like you are not meant to be fully molded by your husband.
No.
At all. Like you actually, he can love you and accept you for where you have come from.
Yeah.
He can look at your tattoos or at your experiences that you've had, and that actually adds value, like because you have lived life, you know, like you are not coming to him as this blank slate for him to decorate according to his ideas of what a woman should be. Because if you're with a man who thinks that that's the way that marriage should look, then that's not a good marriage.
He's not the
like,
type of
that's
guy that you want.
manipulative
He's just
and
not.
abusive and
Yeah, you don't want that.
And it's not about like, oh, you need to live life and like paint your own masterpiece so that someday he'll admire your beauty. That's not what we're trying to say. What we're saying is like, to be a human, you have to live your own life and paint your own masterpiece.
Yeah.
And you know, this theoretical spouse will fall in love with that human, not in love with, you know, something blank that he can do whatever he wants with, you know?
And most guys, or at least this is my experience with my husband, I won't say most guys and generalize, but he actually didn't want to, because I had some of those toxic mindsets when I started dating my husband, and even into our first few months of marriage. And I remember being so frustrated and confused because I'd be like, well, I want to do this. Why don't you want to do this with me? And he's like, because I don't. But if you want to do it, you're more than welcome to. And I almost was like offended of like, oh my gosh, he doesn't like want to do this with me. Like, how's this going to work out? And like, and I had to get over it, really.
Like, I'm going to have this experience that only I know and he doesn't know. And
and it's literally like, you are not a princess that needs to be rescued and told how to think and what to do. Like, and actually, if you marry a real man, he's not interested in that either.
And also, it's not even about what a man is going to think about you. It's just about like, be you, be a human, live your life, love yourself.
Yeah.
And like,
do what makes you happy.
And the other pieces will fall into place as they will fall. Emma, in the past, you've mentioned kind of being defiant at some point in your journey about being married at all, like to the point that the messages about you need to get married and wait for your husband, etc., got so overwhelming that you eventually got to the point where you're like,
screw it.
I don't even need to be married ever. So how do you feel about that now? And why did you feel that way? And how do you feel now?
Well, I think that there is, just in my nature in general, a big part of me that wants to go against the status quo, right? I see everybody else saying that they need to be married, and I've seen the ways that that's affected people negatively and has caused so much pain and feeling just like you're incomplete. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to think that at all. I'm going to like totally shove that idea to the side and say, I don't need to be married. I don't need to date anyone. Like, I'm not even going to really think about it. Like, it is put into a box, locked away, shoved into a corner. And I think that is also not necessarily the healthy way to handle that. I saw things like when I was in high school and I had become a Christian, we were told that you needed to have like this list of standards for your spouse. You needed to be able to know what you wanted in order to find somebody and like have a good Christian healthy marriage. And I took that so seriously, like so hard. And I went home, I wrote out at least 3 pages of things that I wanted in a spouse. And it was down to like the littlest, most ridiculous things. Like he must play the guitar, or he must like be interested in these things, or I want him to have this color hair. Like it was stupid. And I saw this list and I was like, any boy that came my way, I needed to vet through this entire list. And that actually turned into, when I did date in high school, I felt like I had sort of failed, or like I needed to feel shame. Yeah, because I had compromised this list because it was impossible for anyone to fit into a 3-page list of everything you wanted in this imaginary human. And so I feel like I saw the ways that strategy had sort of failed. And was like, okay, well then I'm just going to like throw the list out the door and not think about any of that. And I think that comes along too with like the idea of praying for your future husband. Like this is a very common thing in the Christian world, is the idea that you should be praying into your future marriage, pray for your husband, pray for him to have a great relationship with God, pray for him to come quickly, all of those things. And I felt like if I spent time praying for my husband, then I was essentially wasting my sort of brain power on this theoretical thing when I could pray about more useful things. And at the same time, I've come to recognize like there actually could be a lot of value in praying for that. There can be so much fruit that I think could come from actually praying into this relationship. I think that part of why I've sort of like bucked at it is that it seems difficult to me to straddle that balance of like obsessing over having a future husband and totally rejecting and being closed off to the idea of having a future husband. Like it feels difficult for me, and I think for a lot of single women, to strike that balance in the middle of feeling like I can be seeking this person, I can be desiring to be in a relationship, but also my life still goes on, and this is not the end all be all. This is not what occupies all of my brain space and my heart space. So I think that those are kind of the two things that made me buck away from marriage. And I think that also the fact that I have grown up in a family that had so many people who got divorced. Like their divorce is rampant in my family, and not just one divorce, but multiple divorces per person. And so seeing that, it was like, okay, maybe this like marriage thing isn't really all that it's like chalked up to be. I would even tell friends when I was literally in elementary school about how I was destined to be divorced because so much of my family was divorced. I was like, it's just going to happen. This is a reality of life. And so I think that for me, there's a lot of different factors that have come into my view of marriage and my sort of reluctance to kind of like openly want it. Because I also do feel like part of it is I think there's a pride aspect where I don't want to seem quote unquote pathetic, you know? I don't want to seem like I'm just pining after a future human. So all of that to say.
Yeah, there's a lot of feelings and pressures and things that go into singleness and how you, navigate it and what it means. And I feel like the church preaches the benefits of marriage a lot more than they talk about the benefits of singleness and why it's important to be single.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So with all that being said, that straddle that you kind of described of almost two extremes, like, has that caused you to struggle at all with like comparison? Or how have you learned to be content in the waiting? Because you have a very full life and you do a lot of things. So yeah, love to pick your brain on that a little bit.
Well, I know that, again, part of this is I can only speak to myself and my experience and not necessarily the experience of all single women, but I know that comparison is something that can creep in. And for me, it's sort of a lack of wanting to really celebrate other people in their relationships. I think that, especially when I was younger, there was this, like, if a friend of mine was in a relationship, like, it was instant jealousy, and instantly falling into a mindset of like, well, what does she have that I don't have? Because she's being asked out, but I'm not. Or like, guys seem to like her, but they don't like me. And I think that still does come up like in sort of smaller doses now. But I also think that I genuinely love spending time with my friends who are in relationships and like with their significant others as well. Like, I think that a lot of single people sort of balk at the idea of being like a third wheel. But I mean, with you guys, I'm often a fifth wheel. So and I think that that's really intimidating for a lot of people. But it's become something that I'm much more sort of used to and that I welcome, because like I want to have diversity within my friendships, whether that's like it in many facets, you know? And so I think to allow comparison to keep you from spending time with people who are in relationship is going to keep you from learning valuable things that you could gain about a future relationship you could have, or even just within your friendships. Like, your friends who are in relationships or who are married, like, they need your voice too as a single person. Like, they can value and gain from your perspective as well. And I think that a lot of single people can fall into the lie that they don't actually have much to offer. And so I think that comparison can be really easy to fall into, but ultimately, like, one of the things that I feel like I've learned over the past several years is that whenever I feel that comparison, I can turn it around to celebration. In fact, like, that was like a reminder that I had on my phone for a long time, where that would come up every day. That would just remind me to celebrate people instead of fall into jealousy or comparison. And that's like across many different things, but it definitely applies within relationship and whether or not you're in one. So
I love what you had to say about that of like, don't believe the lie that you don't have something to offer to this person or this couple because you're not in a relationship. Like, gosh, two of my closest friends, you and Annika, are both single, and you both have so much insight that you've brought to my life, and it's been such a support. Like, honestly, like, if I didn't have you two ladies, where would I be? I don't know. And like, you're so valuable, and your value doesn't change based on if you're in a relationship or not.
Yeah.
That's
I
so
actually,
important.
as we're talking about this though, I'm realizing there's kind of like an advancement in the church that comes with having a husband,
Yes.
where we are seeing more and more. Before it was just like a husband was at the front and a wife was like a supporting character, but now we're seeing more and more where there's like these teams of husband and wife duos that, you know, mentor people and lead people and host small groups and have, you know, parties at their house and build relationship and bring people to Christ, etc. And while that's all beautiful and good, I think maybe sometimes we forget that single people have that presence as well.
Yeah.
They carry the same presence.
Yeah.
And you don't need a team or a dynamic duo or anything like that to be able to mentor other people.
Yeah.
Whether they're single or not single, you know? Like I've had single people in my life mentor me I was married, and she's not married, she doesn't know, but like she could speak into my life as an older friend about just, you know, all sorts of things. So yeah, I think don't disqualify the presence that you carry.
Yeah.
Don't disqualify the value that you bring.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
And also the church has a responsibility to do the same.
Totally.
Like, I have watched young, attractive, single people get passed up for lead ministry opportunities because they're single. And I think the intention was probably good of like, oh, well, we want to protect. No, I don't think it's good. We want to protect their purity or whatever. And so it's like, okay, you'll be a co-pastor. And I'm like, that's like the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because you're single. Like, and we don't believe and trust that you're going to manage yourself.
right.
You're going to get passed up for a leadership opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, in the
Newsflash, married people are having issues with their purity as well.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, just this week, there was a prominent pastor that was removed from his position. And like, marriage doesn't change the fact
that we're
that
all
people
dealing
have
with sexual
issues
sin.
and sex drives, and like, that doesn't change. Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and even the idea of a single person having to go into a co-pastoring role instead of a full pastoral role is perpetuating the idea that you are still only half a person as you're single. That you are a half of a whole, and you need to find your other half.
Yep. Before you can fully be
before
all the
you
things
can
you're supposed
do
to be.
these things. And it's like, I don't see how marriage would change your inherent value as a human.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't.
Totally. So, as we are married people and have not been in the single arena for a long time, what do you wish married people understood or would change about the perception of being single?
Well, like I mentioned before, I think a lot of times single people are met with like pity, are met with this like encouragement or like, don't worry, one day it'll happen for you too. And I especially see this with like an older generation of married women. As I've interacted with them, they'll say, like, I'll say something like, oh yeah, like I'm single, and they'll be like, oh well, don't worry, only for now. And I'm like, I wasn't making a statement of need or of lacking. Like, I was just making a statement as simple as the fact that my hair is red or my eyes are brown. I forgot the color of my eyes for a second there. But like, it's not something that needs to receive a response, I don't think. Like, I don't know. It seems bizarre to me, the idea of if one of you were to come up to me and be like, oh, well, I'm married, I wouldn't go, oh my gosh, congratulations. Like, you've been married like for 7 years. Like, why would somebody tell you congratulations right now or celebrate it? Like, not that it's not worth celebrating, obviously, but like, so why do people go up to single people and decide that they need to give them this sort of this encouragement or this pity or this affirmation? Like, it's not something that I think needs to be acknowledged necessarily. Like, I think that there's so much more to people than their relationship status. And I think that that mindset makes people feel like they don't have value at this stage of life. And I think that we could instead focus on all of the great things that these people have to offer, you know? Like, I don't know. I guess my thing that I'm trying to say to married people is that the only time that you should be focusing on somebody's singleness is if they're asking you to assist them in their singleness, essentially. Like, if someone is seeking to date people, or if somebody is looking for advice within that, that is the time. But just somebody acknowledging their relationship status is not the time for this advice or this it's sort of it's unwarranted. And I think that there's a lot of pressure on single people whenever we go somewhere new or meet new people, where the response from your mother or from that older woman who's in your life is, oh, well, did you meet a nice boy while you were there? And it's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't focused on like scoping out the men that were there. I was focused on making friends and spending time with people. Like, I think that honestly it can make single people fall into this like objectification of others, because you're constantly, as a man or a woman, looking at other men or women and evaluating them all the time. You're saying like, well, could this person be someone I could date? Could this person be my future husband or wife? Like, is this somebody that I see this value in? When instead we could be focusing on just building great friendships. And I think in my limited dating experience, I've seen relationships come out of friendships rather than from constantly monitoring for a spouse. Like, it almost feels like you're like a hunter hunting for people, and like you're looking at them through your scope, and that's not fair. You're not equals in that situation. You are not valuing them as humans in that situation. Like, they are they're being seen just as a potential and how they can serve you. So I think that all of that can come from this thing that is perpetuated not just by married people, but by a lot of culture as a whole, that singleness is like an issue to be resolved.
I mean, that's like the plot of like every sitcom ever.
Yep.
Yeah.
Every rom-com ever.
Yeah.
Is like finding your man, not being alone anymore, you know, getting...
Yep. The guy gets the girl, or the girl takes off the glasses and he realizes she's the one all along.
Yeah.
Like, it's constantly grilled into us.
And it's not that there's not a beauty in that. So it's not like disqualifying the value of marriage or the beauty of, you know, love or whatever, but...
There's just more to the story.
Yes, there's more to the story, and yeah, your pinnacle of life is not your wedding day.
Gosh, now next time that someone says, oh, I'm single, I'm going to be like, that's awesome. Good job. Like, I don't want to be patronizing, but I'm just like, I feel like people should be equally celebrated.
Way to go.
Or even ask, oh, how do you feel about that? Are you happy? Do you like it? Good. I'm glad. Or are you not happy? Okay. I don't know. Just holding space for either side.
Yeah. Because it's just, the thing is that, like, I feel like it's not even something that needs to be addressed. Like, it's sort of like beating a dead horse at some point, where people have heard, like, every reaction in the book to them being single, and it's like, well, why is that the thing that people hold value to, or why is that the thing that is even like brought up. I don't know. Like, I mean, it's not like you need to, like, no one should ever talk about the fact that they're single, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, there's just so much more to a human.
It's almost like, how can it be like a response of like you said earlier, I have red hair. Oh, you have very nice red hair. Or like, I have brown eyes. Oh, you've got very pretty brown eyes. It's like, oh, I'm single. Oh, great. You know, like, how do we neutralize it?
It's like if you said, yeah, I have red hair, and we're like, for now. Don't worry.
Just wait.
Don't worry.
One day.
We will take you to the salon, and we will fix that.
We got you.
Don't worry. You know, that's
Or
kind of the attitude.
brown eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, they have colored contacts. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be
It's like, oh, well, you know, you could do online dating. It's like, ah.
Yeah.
But then to flip that, like, thank you so much for your insight on how married people can help support single people. But what advice would you give to other singles?
My advice for other single ladies and men, I guess, as well, would probably be that you need to live your life now. You need to live your life to the fullest in this moment. There's nothing that you're waiting for. There's nothing that you need to put on hold, because the life you're living right now, you're not going to get back, you know? Invest in your friendships. Invest in the relationships that you do have. Don't put them to the side because you're so worried about this one future human. I think that, I mean, like I said before, like, the saddest thing would be to look back at your life and realize that you put so much of it on hold for one person. And I think too that one of the amazing things about being single is that you are actually gaining so much information about what you want. Like, you are gaining so much in watching other people's relationships, in dating people. You get to figure out more and more what it is that you want in a spouse, and you can make that decision like so much more informed now. Because I look back at myself when I was dating people in high school. I dated guys that were really mean, who were really awful, and I saw that as attractive or as whatever, macho. And I see so many of the like toxic things that came out of that. And I've learned so much from those relationships. And I've learned from watching my friends get hurt. And I'm able to come forward into a position of wanting to be in a relationship and say, like, these are the things that I value. And I can also like sift through that 3-page list I made in high school and say, like, okay, actually, like, these aren't things that I value. Like, if I had based my life around this list that I had, then the person that I would have wound up with would have just been superficial, because the things on that list are not the core of who a human is. And that's what you're marrying someone for, is for the core of who they are, not for whether they can play the guitar or whether they look a certain way or whatever. Like, this is someone that you're committing to for your life. And so I think that one of the things that is actually a huge advantage in singleness is getting to know yourself more and know what you want in a relationship in a much more like mature way. And so that's sort of my advice and my encouragement to other singles, is that this is an opportunity to sow into your life, to sow into your friendships, and to know more and more like what it is you want your life to look like.
Yeah. Solid. So last question, just because we are the Woman Being Podcast.
What?
Yeah.
That's the podcast we're on?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's where we are?
That's
We're doing that?
We're doing the Woman Being
I
Podcast.
thought we were on
So-
Joe Rogan.
Oh, Jimmy Fallon? I didn't know.
Does he have a podcast?
No, I just was like, Jimmy Fallon.
We can officially call this now the Jimmy Fallon Podcast. Just because.
Plus some Joe Rogan.
There's not another one out there, so
Oh my gosh.
This is it.
this is it. Yeah. Okay. So because we're on the Jimmy Fallon podcast, I wanted to ask a really crucial question to this podcast, which is, what does single woman being mean to you?
To me, I think it means independence and being unhindered. You know, like I mentioned this earlier on, but there's this freedom in being able to act without consulting another. And I know that partnership in life is valuable and good, and it's not something that is like locking you into a prison of marriage. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not. But there is this this flexibility and this freedom that singleness has as a woman, to be able to like come into your own on your own. And I think that there's this ability to dive deeper into your inherent value. And I think that the single woman being is a force in her knowledge of her value. That she is unwavering in that, and that she doesn't question that, but she knows it and she sees it, and she claims it. So yeah, I think single woman being is pretty cool, honestly.
Yeah, she is really cool. And thank you so much for sharing all of your beautiful thoughts and your process. And I think a lot of single women out there can relate just to this idea that, like, you are valuable right now. You are qualified right now. And so keep, like, painting on that canvas and building up that beautiful person that you are. And yeah. So thank you all for watching the Jimmy Fallon podcast. Please follow us at Jimmy Fallon Podcast. Our website is welovejimmyfallonpodcast.com. Okay, no, for real. At Woman Being on Instagram, or our website is womanbeingcommunity.com. Thank you so much for listening or watching or whatever you're doing. And we wish you the best. Have a great day.